Welcome to the World United. Welcome to the World United.
Now next we have our next speaker, who is Mr. P. Raghuveer. A small introduction on Mr. Raghuveer. Now, he's a postgraduate in chemistry from Osmania University. He joined IFS in the year 1984 and retired as the Chief Conservator of Forest in Telangana in November 2020. He did his PG diploma in wildlife management and HRM. He's also trained as a CIO from IIM Ahmedabad. He's coordinated APAC networks for better environment with civil society involvement too. He's a passionate proponent of ISR, that is individual social responsibility towards the environment. A regular resource person to several national level institutes and organizations on environment, forest, HRM, and e-governance. Thank you so much, sir, for being a part of this platform today. And sir will be speaking on ancient wisdom on environment conservation. Sir, the platform is all yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andy. I requested for enabling the sharing provision for my system, because the host, apparently you are the host, you have disabled screen sharing. So if you can kindly enable it, I'll be able to quickly go through, because seeing is believing. So I'll just go through.
Fine. Yes, I'll do that. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Yes. Can you share now?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I will be able to. Yeah. I hope you are able to see.
Yes, yes.
Probably you need to excuse me, because I am in some remote village around 60 kilometers from Hyderabad. So internet connection is a little bit unstable. Hope you'll be able to make it. I hope you're able to see it. Even as you can see, it's also pretty poor here. I'm using my mobile flashlight to at least make myself more visible to all of you. But anyhow, I thought I should take part in this particular conference and then share a few of my thoughts. A lot of things are said much before by our ancestors, but unfortunately over a period of time, so we have forgotten them. So my purpose of this particular session is only to probably try to refocus on those. It's a sort of an appetizer. You can, those who find it interesting can further explore this particular aspect to learn a little bit more. And why we have to repeat is because people, having heard it for ages, have still not acted upon them. So it is upon us repeatedly these things. Okay, I hope. Yeah. Right. Can you see the slide now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Basically, if you see India, we have over ages several of these ethics for the protection of the environment, and even many of our epics, Mahabharata, Ramayana, or even Gita, Puranas, Smritis. A lot of them, if you study in detail, contain messages for preserving our environment and maintaining an ecological balance. And basically, we never consider that nature has to be conquered. The Mother Earth has to be conquered and dominate. It was always live and let live sort of a principle. So we should coexist. And as long as we take care of Mother Earth, she will ensure that we live longer in a healthier and a better climate. Not only we, the human beings, but also all the other living beings, be it plants and animals. That's the philosophy which we see. And when we talk about the gaining knowledge, if you see in Smritis, when you want to gain knowledge, a teacher can give you only 25% of it, but self-analysis, how you are going to apply that in your day-to-day. That's what my forte is, the individual social responsibility towards environment is. So you gain another 25%. And when we discuss these things with people like you in such fora, or even informally, otherwise also, you gain another 25%. That's where I've come here to learn that. And then, of course, the last quarter is the process of living or following the existing acharyas or new acharyas, or modifying them, deleting them. So there are several things we do on a regular basis. There are so many books on these, the science behind all of this. And that is where you gain the process of living another 25%. And of course, we believe, Indians, that all elements, everyone. I mean, you see a soul even in a plant. If you can actually map the aura of trees, I have actually done that experiment in Netherlands. You can actually feel the power of the energy of the tree. I mean, even 30 meters away or 20 meters away, also depending on the health of the tree. So that's something which every living being has got. So we actually look at them as divine things. And if you see, sometimes the environment is not friendly to us. The Gita says, please tolerate it. The better times will come, but don't try to do something silly. And then, of course, we worship rivers, we worship mountains, we worship birds. And then because we see it's our actually feeling that it's all God personified, and we are very, very grateful to the nature. And that's how our way of life is. And then because of this, the God is in all the living beings. That is a philosophy here. So we consider all living beings, be it plants or animals, as sacred. And then our life depends on these plants, the vegetation, because as you know, for your food or oxygen or needs, we need these very much. So that's what it says. And then in case you need to cut any tree, it is prescribed at least 10 trees have to be planted, and that's the principle being followed now. And then before cutting, kindly say, excuse me, tree, I am cutting you for this purpose. Please give forgiveness. I mean, that's the sort of a thing we are supposed to do before cutting a tree. And then, of course, there are trees which are worshipped, like Tulsi is something which is worshipped in every household, even till today. And temples also, you'll find a lot of trees being worshipped and people tying the sacred threads. Now, as you look at the Vedas, they have, I mean, a whole lot of information or inputs on how vegetation protects us, our lives, whether it is Rig Veda, the verses, or Samaveda on the chants, or Yajurveda on the sacrifices to be performed, or the priests of Atharva, whatever they say. Everywhere you can find a lot of mention about the forest vegetation protecting you, and that's a need for us. And if you see the Samhitas, they have 4 Samhitas. You can look at the various books. I'm not going into the details of this, but one thing which interests me is the great forest tract, the Brahadaranyaka, which has several philosophical writings in the Upanishad. I'll be probably ending my presentation with one quote from one such Ishopanishad. But there were kings earlier who tried to establish agriculture settlements and towns by clearing the forest, but of course they have taken care of the remaining forest as well. And if you see the tradition of the Vedic age, a village is considered complete when it has got these vanas, which is Mahavan, which is a protected forest area, and Shri means wealth. So when there is a forest for prosperity, the production forestry is also mentioned there. And Tapovan, where it's a sanctum sanctorum, you can say, and no animal or tree could be harmed in that. So that's something like our national parks or wildlife sanctuaries, you can see. That's a forest of religion. So these 3, Mahavan, Shrivan, and Tapovan, are essential for every village. And yeah, there is a responsibility for the people also in maintaining the forests. And also household, every house should have vegetation. And every village should have a panchavati, that is 5 trees, each symbolizing the 5 elements of nature. And if you see the irrigation, the water, because the link between man, water is age. I mean, you can see the Indus Valley civilization or any civilization, man used to settle only near the water source. And of course, we need to protect these water bodies, and we can plant several of these trees, Arjuna, Banyan people, Jamun, etc. And the entire Prithvi, we say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, whole world is a forest, as we say, and keep the world forest intact. That is what we are supposed to be doing. And then along the catchment area, there is a need to have good vegetation cover. That's what we say. And as I said, if you look at the culture, the Indian culture, the Hindu culture, we have several of the sacred groves. Many places people protect it. Even if you've seen Maflong in Meghalaya, the people there, local people only, religiously protect their forest, and then they even while going into the forest, they'll remove their shoes and go, sort of a reverence they show to the sacred groves. And we do have several of these temple forestry and monastery forests where a lot of trees are protected, and we also treat individual trees as sacred. And a lot of importance about human health, animal health linked to the vegetation is found in the literature, in the ancient wisdom. You will find maybe in the Charaka Samhita, Susrutas, Dhanvantari, Nagarjuna, Parashar, all these people who have popularized the usage of these medicinal plants. And we all know about the Ashoka, Emperor Ashoka. He has planted trees on the roadside. But when we research further, what sort of things he did, he actually not only planted big trees, but also small trees which have medicinal value, herbs and shrubs. If those are not available, he imported them and then planted them, because in those days the health services were very poor. There were no medical shops like these days, every street corner, and there were no transport facility. So people will have to walk miles together, and in case they fall sick, maybe a stomach ache, headache, dysentery, or whatever, they'll have a ready-made medicinal plant available by roadside. Not only that, what Ashoka did was he also kept a lot of water available for the cattle, because the human and cattle relation is there. So cattle also needs to drink some water. So he has provided that. And that's why he is still remembered. Although he did the work in 273 BC, even till today in India, right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, when you ask someone who planted trees by the roadside, everybody talks about Ashoka only, because he was a complete package he has given. There were other dictators, like I've seen when I went to Europe. I've seen people like Napoleon and all. They planted trees by the roadside, but it was with some greedy intention, because they were leaving their house and then going to conquer the world. And they don't know the way back, because in those days navigation by GPS was not there. So they have actually taken up seeds of a couple of species, and then started throwing the seeds along the path they were taking, so that whenever they loot another country and then get the richness, they can bring it back with their soldiers. Or if they want replacement, they send a messenger, they will find the way back to their kingdom. So this was a selfish motive. That's why if we see in the Europe and the places where these kings ruled, the diversity is not there much. Hardly 2 or 3 different species dominate the whole thing. Unlike in India, where we have more than 45,000 different species of plants existing. So it is also the intention with which you do. The deeds of the kings are remembered. And of course, we said, I've already said, we consider the trees as a god and worship them. And even if you go to many temples, you'll find people seeking a boon and tying a thread. And Parijata, as you know, the story about the fragrant tree, divine tree, which has been brought to the planet Earth by Lord Krishna. This is an interesting thing. Chatur Masya is something, a concept which was introduced in the ancient time. why? People may say, okay, they were told, don't go to the forest during the post-monsoon season because the gods are resting on the trees and don't disturb them. So idea was this is the time when the seeds which have fallen will be germinating, and they should be given some time to get established. And if people go there or cattle go there, and the chances of survival will be less. So they introduced this sort of a thing, Chaturmasya. So we can give the forest some rest for it, the natural regeneration to get established. That was the thing. And of course, Nakshatra one is something which was a concept introduced so that at least people who are believing in their birth star take care of the trees associated with that birth star. But as I said, Mother Earth has got enough for our needs, but not for meeting the greeds. So I'm not saying this, it is in Atharva Veda, 5000 BC. I'll be talking more about this Prithvi Sukta in my session in the next 5 minutes. What it says, Atharva Veda, is we shall not overexploit Mother Earth. We should only take that much from the planet Earth so that it will come back. And we shall not pierce the heart of our mother. That's what the Atharva Veda, I think 5000 BC, which would be 7000 years back, it was written. And then population at that time was hardly anything. Today we are 700 crore. And 7,000 years back, people realized the resources on planet Earth are not unlimited. So we should be careful. For those of you who would like to monitor what we are doing currently to planet Earth, kindly go to the website overshootday.org, overshootday.org. It will tell you what our human race is doing to sustain ourselves. Because for us to have a ration for 365 days, the Earth Overshoot Day says we have already consumed 1 year's quota in 7 months or 8 months. So the rest of the year, 4 to 5 months, we are depending on the ration quota of the next year. At this rate, they calculate that we may need another planet Earth, which of course is not possible. So we have to be careful about that and be aware. So overshootday.org is the site. You can see that. And then different Vedas, you can say they have talking about why environment should be there for our health, and then what is the role of greenery. This is a very famous quote also. If you summarize it, it says if you are planting one tree, it is equivalent to 10,000 wells. Subhash was mentioning about water conservation. Now you can see each tree can actually help in impounding water, which is equivalent to storing in 10,000 wells. I mean, that's what it talks about, catchment area protection offered by the vegetation. And then as I talked about this Prithvi Sukta in detail level, if you see, it says Earth is my mother, and then I am her son. And then we celebrate it for her gifts to us in the form of vegetations. And then we shall never let our earth be oppressed. And hills, the catchment area preservation and conservation, whether it is brown, black, red earth, whatever it is, it has to be protected fully, which talks about a link for this catchment area to the water availability. And we do have this conservation principles enshrined in this particular Atharva Veda. It says earth should remain green, forested, and human race can sustain only if earth is protected properly. And then integrity of the ecosystem shall be maintained. That's what it says. And but you want to use the resources as well, right? Because you have to survive. So what it says, what can you use? You can take only that much which can be regenerated. That's what we talked about, the Atharva Veda, Prithvi Sukta. And then we shall, in the process, shall not do any damage to the earth or abuse it. So the three segments, what we call of sustainability principles of ecology, economy, and society, they're all addressed in this particular principle. And it says the linkage between earth and the water and the soil is very, very well established. So it has given a caution to human beings, kindly don't overexploit your planet Earth. And it says, keep the axe away from the tree, and keep the fire away from the tree. And then let there be a lot of rain so that you will get a lot of groundwater, a lot of surface water, and every tree gets blessed. And this is what Atharva Veda says. I mean, this talks about biotic interference not being there to ensure protection of the trees. A lot of Indian traditions, as we can see, are still existing, which are making trees as divinity personified. And we have several tribal fairs where they have sacred forests or sacred groves, or including sacred trees, Ram Sita, Ram Lakshman trees. Several of these things can be found everywhere. And then there are certain royal traditions while protecting the forest, like maybe for hunting purpose or grazing of elephants or royal gardens, which are outside the purview of the normal people and protected fully. And of course, for also for livelihood purpose, they have taken it. So in these traditional practices, normally a lot of people depend on the non-wood forest produce. We have calculated almost 30 to 40 different varieties of non-wood forest products are taken by the people from the Indian forests, although we have about 150 plus which can be taken. And this is, if done on a sustainable basis, it will be regenerated. And then use of the resources shall be restrained, and we should ensure proper protection and cultivate useful trees through agroforestry outside the forest also. And also maintaining, like several places, no, tanks which are built earlier are being revived now. So that is something which is mentioned in that. If you look at the Rig Veda, again, I'm just giving you an appetizer. As I said, there's so much of wealth in the ancient literature. I mean, if you dig and interpret, you'll find tons and tons of things. Like, unfortunately, what happens is today, whatever is published in the scientific journals is considered as the truth and nothing much. But we need to understand what people have written already in these scriptures, and then probably validate them. So in those days, the way of living, how it was, how the harmonious living with the nature was happening. And this is what we are supposed to do. I mean, avoid sedimentation of the water bodies so that their life can be expanded. And sedimentation occurs because the catchment area is not protected. So that's a principle of any irrigation department fellow will tell. That's what is the scientific management is all about. And then this is another interesting thing, that water management, it talks about leasing to people or for maintaining them. But again, it is for public interest only. They have to. But the interesting portion is that this fellow who is given the maintenance of the water bodies will have to maintain it and ensure that public gets the benefit. He can't really do any other thing. Closer to our Indian Bishnoi community, the Rajasthan, you all are familiar with the Forest Martyrs Day, which is celebrated on 11th of September every year, because 370 odd people died while protecting their forests. When the king wanted to cut, they said, you can't cut our trees. And that's how one of the famous quotation from the Bishnoi leader, if one has to lose head for saving a tree, it's very, very inexpensive bargain. I mean, that is a attitude. And today, Bishnoi community is regarded as most, what you call vociferous community, which is very possessive about their forests and wildlife. We also have this sort of a tradition from Krishi Parashara, 400 BC. You can see whenever Jangli Pyaz is there, it says a lot of rains will come. So people accordingly plan their cultivation. So this is basically interpreting the nature. And then what we said, Earth is to be considered as a sacred space. Again, I repeatedly say, we don't see Earth as a planet. Earth is our mother. So Mother Earth, Prithvi Mata. So we should see God in the, not only in the sunrise and sunset, but also in the flow of water and the vegetation that is there. And Lord Mahavira, he made a very interesting comment. He says, if you are not taking care of these elements, earth, air pollution, fire, water, vegetation, that means you are disregarding your own existence. That's what it says. Finally, if you look at Mahatma Gandhi, he has mentioned in his writings, he says he's actually thanking our forefathers for making so many scriptures for protecting of the nature and highlighting the religious significance. And yeah, this is another famous personality who is giving this statement. Is a spiritual leader revered by many people. He says, only if we care for it, we can actually ensure that we continue to use the resources sustainably. And we are actually responsible for that because we have to give it back to our coming generations also. Who said this? This is our Dalai Lama. So this is something which has been said. Finally, as I said, I will conclude with this particular quote from Upanishad, the Isha Upanishad. It talks about water. What it says is whatever water falls on earth from sky, which is your rainwater, it should be conserved suitably above and below the earth. Above means maybe your tanks, reservoirs, your rivers, everywhere. And below is your groundwater. Why it should be conserved? So that it is available everywhere for all living beings. This is the word to be emphasized. Today, what happens is man has taken over the water management, and if you see the cities, towns, and all, entire water tanker business is for only one species, Homo sapiens, and entire agriculture. If you see the bore wells, groundwater being overexploited, again is for Homo sapiens. It's not other plants and other animals. We should understand we share this planet Earth with probably another 18 lakh different unique species. Homo sapiens is just one species. So there are 17,99,999 other unique plant and animals. We are not talking about population. Like Homo sapiens is 700 crore plus. Similarly, these 18 lakh other species will be in billions. But all of them also need to survive on this planet Earth, and they form part of a food chain. They're part of our food pyramid. They form the part of the ecosystem. If all the systems function properly, then only we can actually survive. So when we talk about Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu, it is not Sarve Jana as in the human beings. It is all living beings, and that's the reason why even our Indian Constitution, if you look at our fundamental duties, Article 51 AG talks about every Indian citizen shall have to perform a duty towards forest by protecting and improving it, towards wildlife, towards water bodies, whatever they can do, that's fundamental duty. And also it says you should have compassion for all living beings. That's what it talks about. And thank you so much, Andrea, for this opportunity of sharing a few thoughts with all of you. It's been a pleasure bringing this to you. I hope technical issues was not there because the problem with virtual conferences is we actually don't get to see the audience reaction, or make an eye contact. So it's like speaking to a machine and then assuming, yes, we are speaking to the universe and then sending out a strong message. That's what it is. Thank you so much, Andy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Raghuveer. Thanks for your message. And as part of a small token of appreciation for you, we would actually like to present you with a certificate. So, sir, this is your certificate here. And this is from the World United, a certificate of appreciation for being a part of today's festival and actually sharing your ideas and your views with us. Thank you so much, sir.